What's going on, YouTube? In the garage today to talk about feeding your Mustang. This is the video that you guys have been waiting for, at least some of you have been. But before we get into it, please hit that thumbs up. That's the like button. It's free. I do appreciate everybody that does that. And make sure you hit the subscribe button down here in the corner and the bell for notifications for future content, Fox body related. But anyways, let's get into it. All right, so you see I pulled the tank out already. And actually, I decided to go with the other tank. I have a nice new clean tank. These that had a good clean rubber on it. I went ahead and when I pulled this from one of the factory like smog exhaust lines, you can go ahead and vent it just like that because I'm going to install it just like this. Or you can do it to the front or however you want. It's still got the fuel sending unit in it. There's usually a rubber ring right here, which we're going to steal from this other tank. Make sure you don't forget that because that ring has to be in there. So now you're kind of already set. And if you look over here at the table, I'm actually kind of ready to show you how to do this mod. And you can see I've already done this mod before. I've actually got a couple of them on the shelves just from other cars and other builds. But I'm going to basically start over from fresh. All right, so this mod specifically is good for Fox bodies that are being modified. Now that could be just heads, cam, intake, injectors. You know, having a bigger fuel pump to feed your car is just gonna help you in the long run because it's just gonna give you more fuel. You know what I mean? The factory one's like 75 to 85 LPH, which is liquid per hour. And like this particular one that I'm taking apart is actually a 340 Aeromotive. You can always tell because it's very proprietary for the red and the black sleeve and what have you. So we're going to send this one. I'm going to actually do the mod up top here like I did the other one. And I'll show you what I do with the wiring and such. So, but before we get into it, we got to go ahead and take it apart. Now all this same stuff that I'm doing now is actually the same shit that you do like with a regular factory one. Your factory hanger is going to look just like this. It's just not going to be red, okay? It's just going to have like a silver fuel pump. And it's a 1/4 inch drive. You know, it's real easy to take apart. You got these two screws right here on the side. See them? So you could just use this hand tool. You could use a ratchet. You could use whatever you want. Go ahead and take these things loose. I've already cheated a little bit and unplugged my pump. It's kind of lipped in here. Usually there's a sock here, like a filter or whatever. We've already taken that off. We'll put it back. You unplug. Factory ones don't have this. Factory ones, well, some of them have a plug, but most of them are hardwired in. You can see this one here is hardwired in. We're going to get rid of all this garbage because we're not using this. I mean, this is already brittle. And it's like 14 gauge, maybe 14. That can't feed a 340 pump at full efficiency. So we're gonna go ahead and pop this pump off. All right. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this over to the vise. I'm gonna get my drill ready and I'm gonna cut some holes in it. Go ahead and take this ring off because this ring goes to the top. I got a little plastic. These things are a little son of a bitch, but don't lose them. They're always broken. But we're gonna go cut some holes in the top of that, and then we're just gonna go ahead and leave this S hose in here. This is your feed hose or whatever. So we'll go ahead and throw this back in for stability, and we basically have stripped this down. I'm gonna go over there and cut and snip these wires because I don't want this shit no more. I got 10 gauge wire over here in my box. And that's what we're going to use. We're going to cut a hole in it or whatever. So I've disassembled my hanger from the tank that I took out of. It's a nice hanger to use. If your hanger's got a little rust at the top, it's no big deal. Clean it off. We're not even going to be using this connection at all anymore. So, but we'll get into that in a minute. So let's move over to the device. All right, so I think I'm pretty much ready to start drilling a hole. As you can see here, I've got a bunch of electrical connections. I got 10 gauge red, positive, 10 gauge black, negative. And I even got a grommet set from, you know, Harbor Freight or whatever. So what I've picked out is, since Yellow is considered 10 gauge with my connectors. I picked out 2 connectors. We're actually drilling a hole. We're drilling 2 holes in here because we're going to bring a positive and a negative through this hanger. And what that does is it basically eliminates this garbage here, because this wasn't even, I mean, the wires coming up to and coming through this hanger here is like 14 gauge. I think some of them are even 16. And to pull 340 amps out of your pump to feed your car, or especially on a power adder, man, you need more power than that. This thing's going to require a lot of amps and a lot of power. So we're going to get into how wiring it up later, but I'm just trying to set this hanger up and get it in the tank so I can get this damn tank in the car and keep on moving. So let's go ahead and drill some holes. I'm going to try to fit it to one of these grommets, and then I'll start it. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to continue with the other part of the video and not delete it. I usually drill a hole through here, but I had an epiphany. Since we're not going to use positive, negative no more, and this is going to be modified enough to where you can't really return it to stock, but you can't, whatever. Maybe we should just cut the rivets out and then take this white housing out. Let me do that real quick, and I'll report back. All right, so yeah, that was an excellent idea. So instead of drilling through this top like I did my last like 2 or 3 mods, I never dawned on me just to remove the damn white connector because we're not going to be using it anyways. Look at that shit. So if you grind out the 2 little rivets that are here that make up that yellow, or that white would be yellow if it's old, like connector or whatever, the connector just pulls out and there's 2 holes. So what I did was I took a drill bit. See what size this was. Looks like 5/16, and I drilled the holes out larger. I ground down and clearanced a little bit on the side because you know when you come through with a drill it leaves jagged areas. And I put 2 5/16 grommets in there. And 2 5/16 grommets is perfect for, you know, a 10 gauge wire, as you can see here. And basically now I'm protected against the wire strafing the side of the housing. You know what I mean? And we can go ahead and get ready to wire our pump. So son of a bitch, you learn something new every day. All right, so now I'm ready to wire this up, I think. With the 5/16 grommets in place, you can see the 10 gauge goes through. So we're just gonna pick one and go with it. So we're gonna go with black first, which is ground. Actually, we should see what side the pump is. Okay, so ground is on that side, and the pump's gonna be in like this. So we want to go on the left side here. So we're going to put enough slack in here. Okay. And then we could actually, since we have enough slack, we definitely want to keep at least a couple feet out, because we're actually going to be wiring this up in a connector or a quick disconnect. And I think this is probably plenty far enough, you know, with extra. Looks to be about 2 feet or there. Go ahead and make a cut. And we'll actually make the red one the same length, the positive as the same length as the negative. So we'll just pull it through. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be trimming it later, so it doesn't really matter. But for the sake of time, we'll get this stuff out of the way. Positive and negative 10 gauge wire. Now I'm ready for the connector. But first, we're going to stick it through the pump because we want to connect on the other side of the pump. Because, you know, we don't want our holes to be massive here. So it's kind of dumb to do that. I'm just trying to keep it airtight without you smelling that fuel. And there you have it. So we have plenty length there in your hanger to run it. See that? I've ran it through the top, ran it through the side, whatever. So now we're at the point where we can put a couple connectors on, which keep moving around here. But I also like to put a couple of these, you know, heat shrinks or whatever on it, heat tubes or whatever. So problem is I don't like these plastic things because they kind of get annoying or whatever. But we're going to make sure they're secure on there. Okay. Maybe we won't this time. I don't know. I didn't have a problem with it before. I'm just being picky. Let's see what this one has to offer. Yeah, we'll send it. Whatever. Let's do it. So, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and wire strip 10 gauge. Since we don't need our grommets, I'm about to kick them over. I'm going to move them. Now, real easy. Just go ahead and stick your wire in there. And yellow on my clamps is 10 and 12 gauge. So we have a nice connection there. I probably should have put this on first, but that's okay. I screwed that up. But we'll be able to still get one in there. I like the fact that it's on there nice and tight. So we'll wire that up, see? Just keep adding some heat until she shrinks all the way up. Kind of like a little extra safety measure, you know, no big deal. All right, and do the same for the other side. Now, what this mod's actually really going to do for you guys, it's actually going to let the pump actually work more efficient. I mean, this is a great mod to do. Something I came up with. I didn't see anybody else do this on YouTube or Google or whatever, but I just kind of perceived the fact that this is what MSD was talking about in Aeromotive. You know, they were like, you know, you got to have a sufficient wire upgrade, and it's just like, what the hell are they talking about with that? So I got the brainstorming about it. You know, well, how could you get, you know, I was always worried at first, you know, oh, well, what happens if the wires touch? It'll blow me up and blah, blah, blah. It never happened. But I'm going to show you why it probably never happened. Let me get in here. Got to heat it up. Plus, it being submerged in fuel doesn't have anywhere to spark. So that only makes sense. So there you have it. Both connectors are done. They're through the grommet. We're ready to put the pump in. I'm going to grab some zip ties, and we'll continue running this mod. This hanger is now at the point of no return. Got excess here. Perfect. This is for me to add a quick disconnect, because if you got to drop your tank sometime, then that's going to suck. You know what I mean? So, sorry for the long video, guys. This is what you do. Okay, so here we go. We're going to take the hanger back apart with the 1/4 inch. Supposed to go racing today. Ohio, it's getting kind of crazy because in May 2019, I mean, all the way up to this point, it's been stupid. But anyway, so putting the pump back in with the S hose. Just going to slip it in. Put the S hose on it nice and secure. Make sure you check that S hose for cracks and shit. You know what I mean? This is your main feed line. Now, I know, I get it. It's 5/16 line. You can only push so much through, you know, so much fuel through, but you'd be surprised at how much fuel actually goes through those lines, stock lines. I mean, I've made, you know, 550 wheel, 60-pound injectors with this pump mod for fucking years. It never ran out of fuel. I mean, it was close, 95% injector duty or whatever, but you know, it wasn't anything that I was worried about. This one's already crimped new, so it's no big deal. So my hose looks good. I got my return hose. I always kind of like to move that a little bit. Just make sure it's not aiming straight down, but it is what it is. So now we got the pump where we can put the 2 screws back in. It's nice and secured. It's got this sleeve around it. This is a used pump, so it's got a little, you know, used action going on there. But, you know, it's through the bottom here. We're going to go ahead and stick our, you know, our 1/4 inch bolts back in its position. Actually, before we do that, we're going to actually hook it back up. So I got a little hasty there. We'll pull the side back out, and we're gonna actually connect it. So this side over here is the positive. So we're gonna pull the slack out a little bit. We'll actually pull the pump out too. and we're going to stick the pump, or the positive side, in the pump. Nice and tight. Should go on nice and tight. Shouldn't be any worries whatsoever. And then the negative side, same thing. So, there you have it. We'll pull these up. Pull this up. Oh, there you have it. And they're not even touching, so you don't have to worry about it. But you also, what we're going to do is we're going to actually zip tie and secure them. See what I mean? We're going to zip tie and secure them so they literally can't come out of their connections. And they're not going to come out of their connections either way. But you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. I'm going to get these screws back in. They went in pretty tight. So I'm not worried about a loose connection. I'm not worried about getting a loose connection. You know, you could use good connectors, cheap connectors, whatever. You got to know, you got to feel it. You know, you got to be like, all right, well, this feels pretty tight in there. You know, the pump, you know, the positive and negative receptacle, you know, it feels pretty good. So you just got to be confident in what you're doing. You know, it's going to be submerged in fuel, so there's not much to worry about. But, you know, we're going to pull the slack out, and basically what I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab a couple zip ties, and you can see, I'm going to grab a couple zip ties, and I'm going to secure these wires. So even if they was bumping around or whatever, they're not going to come loose. So, put zip ties. So as you can see here, real simple. Put it through one way. I'm talking about zip ties here, so I mean this isn't rocket science. But basically what I wanted to do is make them away from each other, not secured together. You see what I mean? I'm going to snip that. I'm going to put a couple of them on there actually. Just to keep them away. Keep them secured. No big deal. So at this point now, I am pretty confident that our pump is done. It's modified. It's awesome. You don't worry about these really until you get the tank in. So you just leave that slack out. I like to convolute tubing it, and that's what I'm gonna do. I also like, I'm gonna run a zip to the S hose. So, all right, I think we're pretty much ready for the tank. This is your modified and you know, fuel pump hanger with the this is an Aeromotive 340. You're gonna always want to get a new sock. This sock was actually new used, and I'm gonna clock it to where I think it needs to be. See, it slides right on. You need this sock, and usually it's, you know, like that, you know, because this is always aiming off to the passenger side, and there's this little box inside with the tank. So anyway. All right, folks, so here we have it. I got the pump in. I got the hanger modified. I got the pump set in. This ring locks the pump in. It's a little rubber grommet underneath that I showed you earlier. And I convoluted tubing, 3/8 tubing, most of this wiring because it's going to be underneath the car. I always like to use factory parts best I can. This is kind of old. I may or may not end up using this, but this is the old hanger where the wiring used to be clipped in it. So it's just a little clip or whatever. What I'm going to create here is I'm actually going to create a quick disconnect. So if I ever got to drop my tank, I just come over here to my harness and quick disconnect it, make sure your battery's disconnected or whatever. But I'm going to stagger that just in case those connections touch. But anyways, this is kind of a PETA to get in. If you don't know how to clock your, you know, if you noticed I had this hanger like aiming this way and then the strainer was straight up and down because there's a little basket in there that fuel likes to pull up at. So anyways, I think we are ready to set that car in the air and put this tank in. At this point, if you already have a relay in the back and a 10 gauge wire running in the back, like you should, you can go ahead and skip this part of the video, because at this point I'm going to get this tank in this car and I'm actually going to wire it back and to our relay. All right, so basically I'm getting ready to put this tank in. Got to make sure I got my my filler tube ain't all ate up with the rust or whatever, but it looks in pretty good shape. This usually would go to the connector for the power ground, and we don't use this anymore. But you still got to connect this in when you go to put the tank in. And of course my 2 straps are ready to go. I got a nice black cover protector over here that we cleaned up. It's got all kind of dust on it, but it's been ready to install for a long time. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put this tank in, and I will show you more video after that. It's kind of hard to do and video at the same time. All right, so there you have it. Tank is installed. So at this point, I've got to I got to fix this return, because this isn't uncommon that sometimes it gets stuck from the old line. This is a different line. This is the return line. This is that vacuum that usually goes to the front. You could plug that back in, but I just let it vent to the back because I don't have smog on this, so it's going to go up front and have fumes. I don't want that. And of course, this is your feed, so I just got to clip that into place. Make sure that you guys always check your wires. Naturally, I made the mod back here. You can see what I'm doing now. I'm actually going to zip tie, you know, all this kind of out of the way. This is the one power that I told you wouldn't be used, but I got my sending unit hooked up, so we could actually stuff that up in here if we wanted to. I'm not worried about connections there because it's plastic and it's protected. But this is where we're going to come through with the floor with the relay, and we're going to connect the power ground relay to this very wire to give the pump its own feed. And this is where I'm going to have a quick disconnect on the red and the black, so I can make sure that I be able to drop the tank. But always make sure that your rubber's here and your lines aren't pinched. You know what I mean? So they're nice and free, and I am ready to continue with this mod. All right, here we go. We're back at it. We actually took a couple days in between the other videos. It was a nice day out today, so we decided to go ahead and pull it out here to wire the rest of it. So as you can see here, I went to the store and bought a 40 amp relay. This relay is going to be what the bridge from powering from the front to the rear is going to be. So I mean, you see here, you know, like terminal 30 and 87 are the bridge for the power 10 gauge, and of course like 86 is going to be the signal wire, and 85 is going to be the ground. So anyways, we got some connectors, nothing special. You know, we got plenty of electrical box stuff, but you can see over here what we're going to end up doing is the relay. We got to pull this panel out, which is only 2 screws, and usually there's a tab screw down here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. And we're going to place the relay right here. That's why I got it on my black card. I'm pretty sure this pink and black wire is your signal wire. Now that's going to be the terminal number, I forget. It's the signal wire from the switch. So it's going to be, you're going to have to tap into that wire, and I'm pretty sure it goes to number 86. So we're going to end up tapping into this. I'm not going to cut it because I don't want to cut it. I'm just going to peel it back. I'm going to make I don't even like Scotch locks. I'm just going to put a wire here because this wire here has no load bearing. Okay. Our whole sole purpose of this is to make our pump at 100% efficiency at 340. And the way to do that is by putting this relay in. So what we're going to do is, if you could pop the hood, Paul, what we're going to do is we're going to run a 10 gauge wire from the coil all the way down the body, tactfully, obviously. We're going to start here, positive side. We're going to run through. We're going to come down. We're going to hide it in the kick panel area, come down, come up through the quarter panel area. If my interior wasn't in here, I would zip tie it to all the harness or whatever. But I'm going to come back here and follow the taillight harness, and I'm going to bring that 10 gauge back here, and I'm actually going to put a fusible fuse. What do you want to call it? I'm going to put an inline fuse. I got a couple of them in here in that area. So it's going to be like a 30 amp inline fuse. Even though I have a 40 amp relay, at least the 30 should pop first if there's a problem. and the 40 amp is your backup. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna end up putting power, 10 gauge direct battery feed power to my pump through this relay. Now for you guys that has this battery in the back, it makes it life a lot easier because you just go straight to your battery. So let me make sure I tell you guys that anybody who's relocated your battery, all this same stuff applies, except you don't have to run that wire all the way back from your coil. You can go directly to your battery. So the best power feed, and I'm gonna actually add this to the video, and it's recommended, your best actual power feed is from the back of your alternator right there. But I don't want to run a 10 gauge, and I don't really have nowhere to go with it. I don't want to go across the motor with it. I don't want to go across the front with it. And I definitely don't want to go past the turbo with it. So what we decided to do, since we're doing a 3G alternator, is this is going to be a 4 gauge, and this is going to run under, along with my O2 harness, over to my coil. And I'm going to put my connector with my 10 gauge that goes back to my pump on top of that. And that's what I did in the black car. Anyways, that's how it's going to get fed. It's still going to get fed the 100% power it needs. It's going to be a lot better than this little 14, 16 gauge crap, because this is all load bearing wire. And for a 340 pump, even for a 255, it's just not enough. So let's get into it. All right, so one thing that we did here that I thought was really cool is we took the sunroof strap, or whatever this factory hole was right here, and we actually created a ground stud for my 10 gauge. Obviously this one's going to go to the relay, and we haven't really cut this one yet because we're going to actually use this grommet to come through this tank. I'm going to go upside down real quick. You can see the light, see? So we're going to use the grommet. We just cut a hole where it keeps the fumes out still. We're going to stick convoluted through it. We're going to stick a one of the powers and one of the grounds through that grommet, so we can come down here and create a quick disconnect like you seen on my other video. All right, so updating again, what I've already done. Actually, I go through and I make these little tags out of just some tape or whatever. You know, relay ground, pump ground, signal wire I'm about to tap into, this pink with black stripe. And of course, I'll have the feed coming from the front. That's gonna be, you know, in that too, so. And you can see I went through my grommet, just made a little hole, came back underneath here where I'm going to make, I got plenty of extra because I'm going to make a quick disconnect under here. So, you know, it'll have ground and power. I could just quick disconnect and drop the tank if I needed to. So, you know, we're going to keep chucking at it. I'm gonna actually end up zip tying these wires together and mounting this relay like right here. And we should be good to go. And then we'll give it a fire up and see what, not fire the car, but I can prime the pump and see if it works. All right, so we had a little bit of a rain delay. I wanted to show something because these cars have been, you know, hacked on for so many years and built and rebuilt and whatever, but, you know, don't ever, like, shorten. When we started messing with this car just now, because I was getting ready to prepare to run the feed, and I know there's some wires here that shouldn't be here, but that's because of the electric fan, which we'll figure out later on. But this didn't even have a ground in it yet because we were messing with it. It just so happens I have a lot of Mustangs, so I have a lot of parts, but this guy didn't even, the previous owner didn't even hook, come here Paul, didn't even hook up the ECU ground here. This is really, really, really important. Go ahead and lift up on this battery. See this ground right here? That's ECU. Okay, he didn't even have this. The bolt was there, but it wasn't grounded. What the fuck, Chuck? So, you know, that little 10 gauge, 12 gauge has to come over here and come to this ground. So we created, or recreated, you know, because I haven't tightened this down yet, a new terminal. And I like to run fleet terminals, you know, and he had a black cable. I mean, come on, don't be that guy. You know what I mean? When you're restoring these cars, don't be that guy. So I put a fleet terminal here with a new red, or a nice red new cable, and this is a factory battery in 10, 12 gauge. So I hooked all that up because it wasn't like that, and it should have been. So anyways, I like to run fleet terminals because they're bigger, they're stronger, and we got, like, I make studs out of them. So what I'm going to end up doing is moving probably MSD and everything over to these studs with 1/4 inch, like 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch come through the bottom. I do that for both of them. This battery's too big for this car, so this is just a test battery. I mean, obviously I'm not going to run this battery, but we're going to stud the 10 gauge here, and the fuse will be here, and then we're going to run it to the back. We're going to go ahead and, I mean, this car didn't have anything, but I wanted to show a couple of things, you know, as we're going. You might see when you're doing this mod, or even just in generic, you know, in general or whatever. So, all right, so I went to the parts store real quick. I've been battling trying to find this custom belt, but, you know, I decided to come back over to your shop. I changed this fleet terminal again because it just was junk. The other one was just junk. This battery's terminal actually is kind of warped right there, so we're going to put a different battery in it. Anyways, you can see I made my connection here for my pump. This is where my 4 gauge is going to come for my 3G alternator post, because you want to run a post over here to feed this. I mean, outside of when you convert the 3G, you got to run the stator or whatever, because one of the wires, the 10 gauge that's in there that gets split, goes to the back. But I always run a 4 gauge over to the terminal here in the solenoid. So we're gonna have to do some shifting around here, but for the time being, got the pump. You know, naturally I tagged it, you know, pump plus fuse. This is my fuse, and the reason why I did this is a 30 amp fuse. And what we're going to do is, when I get the other part of this wire, is going to go to the back. We're going to go through the grommet, and we're going to follow the body, just like I said. We're going to go back to the relay. But I did it like this because that way I'm getting 10 gauge power to a 30 amp fuse, out 10 gauge power back to the relay. Because what I had in my box I didn't like very much. It was older. I was going to change the connection, but that's a 12 gauge wire. And the ones that I found at the parts store, they were all like 14 and 16 gauge inlines, and I'm not going to do that. So I just bought this little this fuse. This is just one way I do it. It's probably the way I'm going to do my fan too. You know, it's a 30 amp fuse, and if it pops, it's right here. It's easy to accessible. What I'm going to do when I get the other wire in here and sent, is I'm actually going to tape all this up so nothing gets touched or whatever, and I can just keep this window open in case I blow it or whatever. So I know this video is long, folks. I appreciate you keeping in there with me. The devil's in the details, and this is the way I run my black car, and I've never really had a problem. And this exact pump setup and feed and, you know, and wiring of the pump works on aftermarket stuff too. So, you know, it doesn't go in vain. You know, if you have it already set up here in the back and you decide to go sump later on and do a bigger pump or whatever, you know, that stuff will just, you just bolt it right on the pump, and it's the same thing. So you've already had the wiring done for both this pump and the other. That quick disconnect, you just make new lines for the new pump. So anyways, all right, stay tuned. I'm sorry again for this video being so long. It's very informative. It's not an easy process, but in a nutshell, there you have it. Just giving you, tomorrow I'm going to run the wire, and we should be able to tap the start button and see if that thing pumps. So all right, so here we go. I got this connection yesterday. We're charging the other battery up. We went ahead and made this fuse connection like I told you. I taped it all one to keep it secure. You know what I mean? This is an easy, just unravel and pull this fuse if it was to pop. But, you know, I just want to stuff it in here. Naturally, obviously, you can wire tuck all this stuff. I'm not a wire tuck guy, so this isn't a big deal to me. I like to have access to my wires if there's an issue. You can see we came in here, we pulled the kick panel, took some of the garbage switches out of it that the other guy had. You know, we just raveled it into the kick panel in with the harness and ran all the way down through the harness, up through the quarter panels. It's only showing right there because I didn't want to go behind the bracket. Now we came up, followed the harness here, zip tied it in here, and this is where I'm going to feed it. I'm going to put a little tape on it to show it to feed. Then I'm going to tap into this signal, and we are done up top. At that point, I got to go underneath, jack it up, and I'm going to do the quick disconnect, which is very simple. It's just 2 connectors. And then we're going to see if this thing actually pumps and everything. All right, I wanted to show you something real quick. I actually have a cut harness from the back. This is actually the purple and black wire, just a little dirty. I'm gonna use that for my signal. And you can see here, I used a grill starter, lighter, whatever. And basically, I heated up this coating and peeled it back pretty much with my fingers. You know, I didn't want to hack at it and, you know, end up cutting some of the wires. That way I can always retape this and tape this back up and put it back to stock. So I didn't actually cut that line, and that's good. And it, you know, it's a signal wire, so it's going up and it's not going to be used. So long story short, we're going to put this wire here and then we're going to hook it to our relay. All right, so I'm pretty much finished up here in this hatched area. You can see here I put the signal wire in, spliced it into the pink and black wire, wrapped it in, electrical taped it, convoluted it, and electrical taped that to keep it. You can tuck it underneath your cargo panels. Mounted sheet screw. This is not a ground, it's just a mount relay. And you can see I made all the wires accountable for each other, and I electrical taped them all together so like they don't rattle and shake loose, and I zip tied them to keep them kind of secured. So, you know, it's a pretty secure little mount. I've used this on my black car and my white car, and it's never gave me a problem. So we are going to give it some ignition, I think, and see if we get some pump, and then we can check our fuel rails all at the same time. All right, so we got the connections done underneath the car. I don't have it up on the lift, so it's a little bit harder to kind of film under here. But, you know, I just ran it through here, threw a zip tie on it, and put it with the factory harness. I put my two connections on and staggered it. Now what I'm going to do is put a convoluted piece here, give it a couple pieces of tape to protect it. But this is pretty secure, it's not going anywhere. So we're about to try and see if we can power this pump up and see how we're doing. All right, so we're going to cycle the key a couple times. Let's check it out. Go ahead. Oh, it's a beautiful sound. Go ahead and pull it off. Cycle it again. You'll hear this relay click. Okay? And we're going to go up to the front and we're going to check our fuel rails and, of course, see if they're leaking any fuel. And you can see the fuel rush. Go ahead. Ah, nice. All right, that's it, guys. Now, honestly, you can do this. There's no wrong answer to the way you're doing this. You could run these wires differently. You can tuck them. You can run a different relay, or not relay, but you know, fuse setup. I mean, naturally, like I said, this would really serve best behind the alternator, but I like, since I got a 3G alternator and my 4 gauge is going to be right here, it's going to be the kind of the same thing. You know, you can tuck it differently. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, and this works for MAGNAFUEL 750s, Walbro 255s, anything upgraded. This is an actual upgraded power to your pump. Some pumps don't have, here I'll show you an example. Some pumps don't actually have connectors. One of these pumps I was messing with, look, it's like hardwired. Like, what is this garbage? That's like 16 gauge. But you want to steer away from that if you can help it. I think I have, you know, another pump to show you. And this one's got its own connector. I don't like that either. But like most of the 340s that I've ever messed with, all have the two connectors, positive, negative. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That is how you upgrade your power. What this does is gives you 340 LPH through your rails. Now it's up to your fuel rails and your injectors to spray the fuel. And again, that wire mod works on sump tanks and aftermarket pumps, and it's suggested you do that. So anyways, it took a lot. As long as this is long, make sure you hit that thumbs up and, you know, sub and notification bells. You might see this video broken up into pieces. I may upload different parts of this video for other content, because not everybody's going to want to watch 30 minutes of this. So anyways, thank you for your patience.